Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to call the March 1st meeting of the Common Council to order. I will ask our clerk to call the roll to determine a quorum.
Alderperson Barzak. Here. Chaplesky.
Here.
Haas.
Here.
Lysick.
Here.
May.
Here.
Probst. Here. Reinke. Here. Rote.
Here.
Vitale.
Here.
Weigel.
Here.
10 present, none excused.
We have a quorum. I ask that you rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Alderman Gary Barzak.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move on to item D on our agendas, public hearings. We have 4 items up for public hearing this evening. I'll ask the clerk to read public hearing number 1. Yes. We are. Okay, we are going to do items 1, 2, and 3 together this evening.
A hearing on an ordinance to amend the official West Dallas zoning map by rezoning the properties located at 9005 through 9029 West Lincoln Avenue, 2307 through 2331 South 90th Street, and 2320 through 2330 South 91st Street from C2 Neighborhood Commercial District and RB2 Residential District to RC1 Residential District. And a hearing on the vacation and discontinuance of a T-shaped alley between South 90th Street and South 91st Street, south of West Lincoln Avenue, as well as the remaining approximately 291 feet of South 90th Street, south of West Lincoln Avenue, which leads into the Aurora West Dallas Medical Center. And a hearing on the special use permit for Aurora West Dallas Medical Center for a proposed addition to the existing parking structure to be located at 9005 through 9029 West Lincoln Avenue, 2307 through 2331 South 90th Street, 2320 through 2330 South 91st Street, 8901 West Lincoln Avenue, and 2349 and 2400 South 90th Street.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the clerk noted, there will be 3 public hearings. The first is going to be the rezoning of this property just off of Lincoln, right on the hospital property. We're delighted to be able to continue our partnership with Aurora, and one of the bigger issues of our success with Aurora has been the demand for facilities, and the resulting demand has been an increase in parking demands in the neighborhood. And so this is going to solve that problem in a big way for the neighborhood in a very architecturally and aesthetically interesting way. Aurora will be acquiring the apartment buildings that are adjacent to the property on Lincoln and 92nd Street. Along Lincoln is one 28-unit facility, and then behind that to the south are 4 fourplexes that will be acquired and then cleared, and then ultimately for a parking structure to be included in there. As part of this rezoning, we also look at our comprehensive plan, and in the comprehensive plan, the 2030 plan, a special section was written about the potential expansion of the hospital into this area, so it's also consistent with our long-range plan for the city. The parking structure will be 4 levels and be providing an additional 633 parking spaces. As part of the clearing the land mass, we have some streets, one street, 92nd Street, that will be vacated, and then 2 alleys. Both of these areas service just primarily the land mass that's going to be acquired by the hospital and then converted to a parking structure. 92nd Street originally went around this way here and has already been vacated. Since there's no private property here, this will be vacated along with those 2 alleys. As I mentioned, the apartments here will be demolished then so that this 4-story parking structure could be built to service the hospital. As part of this special use is also, because the hospital is a special use, and after the rezoning, it'll still require a public hearing, and that's, again, the purpose for the 3rd public hearing is provide for that special use public hearing. Over 2,300 full and part-time people are currently employed on the site, in addition to all the patients that come to the facility. According to our zoning requirements, 2,389 parking spaces will be required, or are going to be provided, but only a little over 2,000 would be required. As part of the special use, we're going to be varying 2 things. One is the floor area ratio, and that's the the amount of building that can cover the land, and that's 1.2, will be varied slightly to 1.4 to allow four-level parking structure to be put over this landmass. And then the second part of the variance is going to be setback requirements. Oops. And in this area here is the property line. That's about 20 feet to Lincoln. Technically, they would require to be provided another 20 feet beyond their own property line. We're recommending that we vary it only 10 feet. One, because we've already got 20 feet there, so that gives us 30 feet. And then two, by allowing them only 30 feet instead of 40 feet, they could get over an additional 100 parking spaces onto that landmass. So it's very, very good for providing additional parking. The other variance are the setback along 81st Street, and that's 20 feet. There's only about 10 feet there. It meets all the requirements to about this alley here, and then it will need the 10-foot variance in that area. The site plan for the proposed parking structure will provide some additional ingress and egress. Currently, the existing parking structure has ingress and egress here and here. The future will allow this to be an exit only, and a new entrance and exit point will be located in this area, and then there'll be employee parking coming off 93rd Street. The architectural design, and we'll go through a couple issues, is very interesting in that it's going to be precast concrete on the base and on the top with brick face in the middle, and then provide some access panels along here. These will be illuminated, so at night it's going to be a nice glow. There's also going to be land here for future sculpture. If any alderman wants to pass away in office, they may have an opportunity to be a sculpture in there, but that still is not yet been decided as to what is going to go in there, and that'll come back to the Planning Commission for review. The roof will also be having lighting and parking. It'll all be LED lighting. It'll all shine down, and there won't be any spray off the roof into the neighborhood. There'll also be landscape planters following the topography going up along there to provide some great landscaping. One of the nice things that the hospital has done in the past, as you've seen, is that they really pay attention to their landscaping plan, and they usually come in with a very good built environment. Another very good feature of this hospital, the way that it's structured within the topography of the site, is that the parking structure will not be any higher than the existing two-story buildings that are on this site. This is on Lincoln at 92nd Street. So this elevation here is going to be about the same as the rooftop on those existing apartments. There'll be one floor underground, or at least partially underground, and then the fourth floor will also be parking, as noted on this area here as well. The Plan Commission has reviewed this recommendation and has approved all three items before the public hearing. If you have any additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Our representatives of the hospital are also available.
Thank you, Mr. Stiebel. Do we have any questions from the Common Council?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
Just a couple of things. Mr. Stiebel, when you were talking about the street vacation, you inadvertently called it 92nd Street, and it's 90th Street, not 92nd Street. It's being
I'm glad that the alderman of the district pays closer attention than I do.
And I also want to comment that the hospital did have a neighborhood meeting. There were a number of people from the neighborhood that were invited to the hospital to view these plans. Alderman Roth and I were both in attendance, and it can express to you the deep satisfaction that the neighbors have for the proposal and for the way the hospital has conducted their dealings in the neighborhood. They've been very responsive and have really upkept the property to the neighbors' satisfaction, and all are very pleased with this new parking structure.
Thank you. Any other questions from the Common Council?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Weigel.
Mr. Stiebel, I'm looking at this, and I can picture that maybe in the not too distant future there may be added parking demand in the neighborhood. Is this building designed that it could stack more parking stories on top of it? I know other buildings have been constructed in West Dallas in the past that have made that accommodation, the idea that maybe we could add another floor. And I know that's probably pretty far along the process, but I'm just wondering if that was a consideration.
No.
Okay, thank you.
There's other surface parking that if they had to have future
Yeah,
parking.
I know
they would
currently
build.
there is, but things may change.
But no, it was not designed to accommodate additional floors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Weigel. Any other questions from the Common Council? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close public hearings 1, 2, and 3. And I will ask our clerk to read public hearing number 4.
A hearing on the special use permit for Cross Point Church to establish a religious institution within the existing building at 11000 West Oklahoma Avenue.
Mr. Stiebel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the former Goodwill site is the proposal for a Cross Church to a Cross Point Church. And I believe they currently have services at the Central High School, and they'd be moving to this facility. Because it is a church, it requires a special use, and that's the purpose of the public hearing this evening. The property is zoned C4, which allows religious institutions as a special use. Hours of operation are typical of what you would see from many of the churches around. Average attendance would be about 125. The parking is always an issue. 160 parking spaces were required based on the size of the building. About 65 are provided on site. But they do have a parking agreement with what was formerly called Skate U, just immediately to the east, to provide for additional parking, particularly at their peak Sunday morning services. They'll also be cleaning up the landscaping that's currently on the site along Oklahoma Avenue. And then in this area here, which it shows here, it was an opening there. There's a fence here and a fence here. And they have currently, Goodwill has that blocked off. The church will either take these out and extend the fence, or take these out and use them as a driveway. The plan also, the current Goodwill sign there will be taken down within 1 year of the approval. The Plan Commission has reviewed this proposal and recommended approval. If you have additional questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Stiebel. Are there any questions from the Common Council on public hearing item 4?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman May.
Looking at the facilities, the average attendance is about 125 people, 65 parking spaces provided. I think that's adequate. However, that's a rather large building, and I have to believe that the attendance forecast would be larger than 125. Do you happen to know what the forecasted attendance is on the building?
All right, no, I don't. Their best guess as to what their attendance would be 125. Now, as any church does, they're going to grow, and they're going to have to deal with those issues with growth.
And do you know how many parking spaces are available at Skate U, by chance?
I believe there's well over 65.
I think it's excellent that they're considering shared parking. I think that's smart. You know, we hate to see our city built up with unnecessary parking. So
Particularly with this type of use, as a Sunday morning use, and the adjacent properties are more in the afternoon, and so it's a good shared utilization.
thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Vitale?
John, is this the denomination church, they're located in some other locations within our community, or they come from the?
They currently rent the auditorium at, I believe it's Central High School, for the last several years.
You know, what really openly I'd like to address the fact that I do understand we don't have really no ruling for ourselves really to control that, because that's the way the laws, the federal laws are set up. But really, in fairness, such huge site for City of West Dallas, you know, I mean, it's really, for me, it's inappropriate in many ways, based on the fact it could be something else could go in there, you know, really. I mean, I understand the churches today, I mean, I'm not against religion, I mean, but the fact is, my goodness, they spread like a seeds throughout within communities, really. And I don't know the reason what it is, really. I mean, I'm objecting on that, really. I mean, we get more and more even within our boundary here. I mean, I like to say the way I feel about it. I said religion, I mean, I'm part of it. I'm not objecting to that. But the fact is, we are in epidemic communities. It's going on all over today. And it seems like the reason, what's really the reason? That's a good cause, I understand that. I mean, it's good cause, but it's costing our community money. Thank you.
Alderman Barzak?
John, in the past, we've had other churches, et cetera, come in, and we have discussed along the way something in lieu of taxes, because they still use the streets, they're still using the snow plowing services, they're still using a lot of things. Was anything discussed with them about any type of payment in lieu of taxes?
No. If somebody comes in for a special use, we don't. If they came in for a rezoning, which the council has great discretion on, then we do. So on rezonings, we talk to about any private nonprofit making a payment in lieu of taxes, but not for a special use.
Was Goodyear paying taxes on that particular property?
Could what?
Goodwill?
No.
Goodyear. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Barzak. Any other questions from the common council?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Reinke?
John, are they leasing the building or are they purchasing the building?
It's our impression that they're purchasing, and we won't know until they complete the transaction.
I see.
If a private entity were to purchase it and then lease it to the church, the building would be taxable. Their personal property would continue to be tax exempt. But if the church or any other nonprofit buys it, then they're tax exempt.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the common council? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the members of the audience? You could have your name and address for our record, and then.
My name is Dave Bloom. I'm the lead pastor at Cross Point Church. My address is 2890 South Acredale Road in New Berlin. I just wanted to say I appreciate the comments by the alderman from the 1st District and others. We do have an average weekly attendance of about 125 people. We have probably somewhere around 200 regular attenders, but they, of course, don't come every week. And we do anticipate significant growth when we move into the building. We've had a great relationship with West Dallas Central High School, Principal Van Duren. We've been very active there. And part of our problem with growth is that we rent 5 different locations right now for all the programs and ministries that we do. And we actually minister to a lot more families than the 125, but they meet at different locations all over the city. We rent a church in another Lutheran church in West Dallas for one program, and another church in Greenfield, and a couple other places for different activities and programs that we do, primarily for families and kids. And our hope is that once we are able to consolidate all of those ministries and programs, that we will be able to give all of those families more access to us, because we'll be able to do everything at one location. And so our Sunday morning attendance, we anticipate, will grow once we have our own space with an actual sanctuary, as opposed to a large high school auditorium, which a lot of people are uncomfortable attending church in a high school auditorium. It's just a comfort thing for them, and so that's more or less what it's about for us. And for us as a church, we are a non-denominational church, and we are very passionate about reaching families in the West Dallas area, and we've been active in the city of West Dallas and been able to partner with several organizations in the city, and we plan to continue on that track once we get a permanent location. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else in the audience have comments or questions?
Dave Weiss, W133S8033 Northview Drive in Muskego. I am one of the elders at Cross Point Church, and just a couple of the comments, just to help you understand. You had some questions and they weren't quite answered. Incrediroll has 99 parking spots currently at their location, so with the 65, we would then meet the 160 requirement based on the 1 spot per 100 square feet. So that's one point. The sanctuary that we are looking at building is a sanctuary that would seat 300 people. With that in mind, nowadays capacity runs at about 75% in churches, where once a church gets to 75% capacity, people don't want to sit on top of each other, sit right next to each other, and those types of things. And so average attendance could go up into the range of probably 200 to 225, somewhere in that range. So to answer that question, I think that we are also talking to the people behind us who own the former Hub Chrysler lot, that's back there, and in the future, we would look to possibly even have some shared parking with them in an agreement, or possibly even purchase more land for parking if that would become necessary. So we're trying to address that. The church does bring a lot of value, as Dave shared, to the community. To look at it just merely from a tax standpoint, I think would be short-sighted, because it's not generating tax income at this point in time, and the church actually does bring a lot of value in aid to the people in the city, and it brings a lot of value to the city as a whole with the work that we do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close public hearing number 4. And we will move on to item E on your agendas, which is citizen participation. This is an opportunity for residents to address the council on matters of interest to them. We ask that you again give us your name and address for the record, and we try to limit this portion of our agenda to 30 minutes, so if you could try to keep your comments to about 5 minutes. Not singling you out, Mr. Olesko.
I'll keep it short. My name is Jack Olesko, 1220 South 85th Street. I guess today's the decision-making for the Type G curb between Washington Street and Greenfield Avenue. I've turned in another petition, more names. People are calling me. I keep telling them I'm not an alder person. Call the mayor, call the alder person, but I guess I'm the point man. The cost came in slightly higher than WISDOT thought. Some of the contractors were right. The low bidder was a little higher. It's well within the 7%, 7-10% range that bids come in at. I just would like to have the board vote unanimously to go with the Type G community sensitive design curb. We're called a Fairview Side subdivision or something like that, so there was a reason for it. We're by the fair, we park on the fair, and the people would like it. I've got support for it. And I guess I'd just like to have a vote. I'd like to see 100%, that we go with this G-style curb, sloping curb. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joni Lutke. I live at 1709 South 80th Street, West Allis, Wisconsin.
Tammy Furry, W244 and 5824 Dovecourt, Sussex.
We're here to talk to you a little bit about the epidemic that we have in our community. A lot of people look at it as a silent epidemic. It's the epidemic of heroin and opiates. Many of you know and are familiar with this. Some of you may not be. In 2015, from January to August, our fire department EMTs responded and did to 72 overdoses that they had to use Narcan. Now that means that there were far more overdoses. They only use Narcan now when they can't get the person back, if there's vital signs or if their vital signs are at a certain level. So we know that that's far more than that. Sometimes our paramedics are going out on a daily basis to respond to overdose calls. And these are not just young people, these are people of all ages. We all know that anyone can become addicted to heroin. It doesn't know any race, it doesn't know any age, it doesn't care how much money you make, rich or poor. In the last 5 weeks, we've lost 4 recent graduates between Hale Central and Dotke. Last week, we lost a student from Dotke that was a recent graduate. These are all from heroin overdoses. Most people don't know that because the typical obituary reads, died of sudden death of unknown causes. But now people are starting to put in there that their children and family members have died of heroin and opiate overdoses. We created Under the Family Resource Center, we have a team of people that are on Common Council, the mayor, community members, and community leaders. We created the West Dallas, West Milwaukee Heroin and Opiate Task Force to take a lead and to address this public epidemic, and to do whatever we can to team up with schools, community organizations, and everyone we can to try to find a solution, to provide programs, community events, and do whatever outreach we can to connect people to resources. I am going to now turn this over to Tammy. Oh, Tammy's going to talk to you a little bit about our program that we're going to have coming up. I will have flyers for you. Ms. Probst will get those out to you guys. I strongly encourage you to please share them with everyone. If you don't know someone who knows someone who has a heroin or opiate addiction, they're not telling you, because it is more common than most of you can realize. After the event, the Community Task Force will continue to do programming. This is our first step. We will offer resources in the community, we'll connect families, and do everything that we possibly can to help everyone who has an addiction or the family members to get some help and to do what the other communities around us are doing. We'll team up with Greenfield, Franklin, to do whatever we can and to not reinvent the wheel, but to duplicate some of their services here in West Dallas. And here is Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Furry. I'm a school counselor at West Dallas Central High School. Part of our Title I funding is reaching out to parents and kind of educating parents. And one need I saw definitely within our community and in Milwaukee County in general too, is the need for kind of educating out the heroin and also giving resources out to families that, you know, are struggling to have students themselves or other family members that are affected by this. So our first event, it's Stairway to Heroin. It's March 15th, 5:45 at night and till 9 o'clock. There'll be a resource fair and also the 2-hour program that will involve, majority of it is community members who will be speaking at that. I definitely encourage all of you, if you have the opportunity to attend. I think you do have another meeting possibly that night here, but you know, if you can be there for just even parts of it, it would be great to see you all there. When we came up, you know, when I came up with this Stairway to Heroin, I kind of reached out to Your Choice because I had seen this program out in Oconomowoc, and I was like, wow, I really want to bring this to West Dallas. It's powerful. We're really, you know, we're struggling in this area too. It's kind of all over. It's a really big epidemic problem that's going on, and we're losing a lot of young lives. I should say young and old. And so that's why I kind of reached out, and then once I heard the cost of it, I'm like, oh, I really want to do this, and then I got Joni's name, and I'm like, I'm going to reach out to Joni, and then just together, because I really wanted to see this come together as not just school, but community, and how can we work together just to get, you know, this awareness out, and that we are all working together. And it's been really powerful, even right now in just the short amount of time we've started to get the flyers out. I've actually had different resources in the community reaching out to me and saying, hey, can I be at your resource fair? Because I can offer your families, you know, this type of counseling or this type of resources. And I'm like, wow, this is powerful that I've got others reaching out and saying, yes, we can help too. So the resource fair to me is going to be another key component, because not only are they going to maybe educate themselves about what, you know, heroin and opiates can do and the addiction process, but it also gives them then resources and hope that there is, you know, something they can do with it, that it's not just they're struggling by themselves, but there is hope at the end of this. And that's our goal, is that hope component and connecting them with what they need.
So of course we came here to ask you for some funding. So we're looking for some support in this from the city of West Dallas. We've reached out. The village of West Milwaukee has also given us a little bit of funding. We've gotten some community sponsors, very powerful. We've gotten a few funeral homes that have donated some money as well, which I think speaks volumes with this epidemic. We also have a dessert table that will be offered during the resource fair. And we, of course, know that our community is fabulous for donating desserts. So we had a lot of people that have offered to do that, and businesses that are donating desserts and water. So that'll be another kind of draw for families to stick around and come into the resource fair and get the information that they need. So we thank you for listening to us, and thank you for supporting us as always, and we appreciate everything you guys can do for us.
And once again, can you just give us the who, where, when?
It's March 15th at West Dallas Central High School. There will be posters. We'll get flyers out to everyone. It starts at 5:45, the resource fair. The actual program itself is 6:30 till 8:30, and we will have both our West Dallas Fire Department, our West Dallas Police Department will be speaking at that, and actually our new police chief will be the MC for the evening. So, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for putting this together. Does anybody else wish to address the council under citizen participation this evening? Okay, we will close citizen participation, and we will move on to item F. Our standing committees will be meeting during recess. Those room numbers are listed on your agendas on page 2. Moving on to item G, the mayor's report. I just have a couple of quick things. Last council meeting, Judge Murphy was in here talking about the State Supreme Court candidate forum that the kids had done, and one thing I forgot to mention in the wake of his comments was to publicly recognize the Hampton Inn and Suites for donating the use of their facility for that event. They gave us everything free, including the microphone setup, the water, the entire use of the room, and I did want to just take a moment to thank them for that. That was a great move on their part. Last night in this room, we had a transportation fair that was put on by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Without going into too many details, I'll just say that there are going to be a ton of changes to traffic patterns and access in our community, and I would strongly encourage everybody who lives here, works here, drives through here, or knows somebody who does to do everything they can to keep abreast of the situation. It is going to be changing drastically and often, and what might be a route to work for you one day may not work the next. There are Twitter feeds, Facebook pages, website updates, email blasts, text alerts, you name it. There are ways to get this information, but we are trying to encourage as many people as possible to try to stay on top of these changes, give yourself a little extra time, and minimize any headaches where possible. We had a couple of retirements in the community that I wanted to just acknowledge quickly. Jerry Musial is retiring after 29 years in our cable communications department. Lieutenant Jeff Nolte is retiring most recently from the Community Services Bureau with the West Dallas Police Department. He served 28 years. And lastly, Carol Spurka served 39 years, most recently in the Records Bureau, and she had 25 of those 39 years at the West Dallas Police Department. I will mention the community dinner dance is also coming up on the 16th of April. This year it is benefiting the Disabled American Veterans Chapter 19, which is in West Dallas here. Those of you that have been there before are very familiar with it, but there is going to be dinner, live music, a silent auction, April 16th, and it is also going to be at the Hampton Inn and Suites. Tickets are available at my office. There's more information on the city's website. That concludes the mayor's report. Do we have any alderpersons' reports this evening?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Probst.
As a member of the Library Board of Trustees, I'd like to announce that on March 19th, there's going to be a Wisconsin Authors Festival being held at the West Dallas Public Library. For those of you interested in learning how to become an author, there'll be a lot of people on hand to talk to you firsthand. There'll be a program, a question and answer program at 4:30 in the afternoon, but the entire program runs 1 to 5. Also, the public library is looking at a strategic plan moving forward, and they are holding their first strategic plan meeting on March 10th at 6:30, and that it's open to the public, for anyone that would be interested in joining that. Along the lines of the Stairway to Heroin that the district is putting on, I know that it's really important. As a teacher for 20 years in this community, I got to watch what drugs were doing right from the front lines of the classroom, and it was really sad. We have a lot of really committed people to this problem that West Dallas is facing, and if we haven't seen it as a public health emergency so far, we should. It is something that has affected every single corner of our city, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. The few times I've gone on a fire department ride-along, I have had the misfortune of going to a death investigation, a heroin overdose. And I've done that so few times, if you think about it. And in those 2 times that, 2 of those visits have been heroin overdoses. Also, on a much more positive note, the Neighborhood Association for the McCarty-Dale area is holding a meeting on the 12th of March, and we are hosting traffic engineer Chris St. Clair from the city of West Dallas to come in and talk about construction issues and what residents can do to help the city and what the city can do to help the residents in and around this downtown area. So, thanks very much, Mayor Devine.
Thank you very much. Any other alderpersons' reports?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move for approval of the minutes of the Common Council regular meeting of February 16th, 2016.
Second.
There is a motion with a second by Alderman May. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item J on your agenda, I'll ask for a motion to place item 6 on file and refer items 7, 8, and 9 to the city attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Weigel, second by Alderman Probst. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item K, standing committee reports, license and health, Alderman Chaplesky.
I'll report those out after the recess, Mayor Devine.
Thank you.
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we stand in recess until conclusion of the committee meetings.
Second.
There's a motion with a second by Alderman Vitale. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are in recess.